Welcome back, everybody. Today's topic is censorship. Specifically, there's a publisher called New South Publishing who is going to print a censored version of the Mark Twain classic, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The editor is one Alan Grebin. He's pretty much got the same reason as most literary censors. It's basically, oh no, this story has complicated ideas. Let's fix it. Let's start with his specific changes. First, he's decided to change the pejorative Injun to the word Indian. Well, it's offensive, certainly, but it does change the context. The word Indian, while not exactly politically correct, describes a certain ancestry. But the word Injun, while having the same basic meaning, manages to imply that the speaker has a sense of self-superiority and considers anyone of Injun background quite inferior to themselves and maybe just a little bit less than fully human. Out of the mouths of Twain's hill folk, these changes are kind of like watching a movie that's been badly dubbed into English. The meaning and context are gone, replaced by something awkward and bizarre. The same could be said of his next edit, changing the term half-breed to half-blood. There's that same contextual change. The term half-breed manages to imply, like the term Injun, the speaker's firm belief in their own vast superiority to the subject, with that same implication that the so-called half-breed is slightly less than human, rather more like a livestock animal to be bred for a specific trait. Admittedly, in this case, the replacement term, half-blood, isn't all that much better. Now, here's the big one. Grebin is changing the infamous N-word to the word slave. Now, let's start by addressing my own inability to use that word. I can't do it, I admit it. There are lots of words like that I cannot say. I was raised to absolutely not think of people in those ways, and to absolutely not use terms like that. But there are plenty of people who do think of people in those ways, and who do use terms like that every single day. They believe themselves superior, by the wealth of their ancestors, or by their ethnicity, or for whatever random reason. They believe that everyone else is just a little bit less than fully human, and that's the point. These characters in Twain's stories are these kind of people that think that only they are really human. And using the word slave instead, well, it does kind of have that same less than human connotation. In a way, it inadvertently reinforces that same kind of thinking that Twain is satirizing. Here, Grebin wishes to not belittle an entire group of people by using the pejorative term, and yet manages, at the same time, to belittle an entire group of people by implying that they are all slaves, or that only they can be slaves. Now, another big argument here is that tired old flag, but think of the children, which really means, this is something complicated and I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to think about it, I don't want to have to explain it, I might learn something about myself that I don't like. Well, children do learn from stories. We all learn from stories. When we are little, we read stories about potty training and monsters under the bed and other happy little life lessons. Because if we are just told the facts, it means nothing, and we neither learn nor pay attention. When we go to school, we are told stories about historical figures, about whales and worms and words, about Flat Stanley. We don't learn history, biology, grammar, geography. It's all about stories. Before books, there are fables and parables. Stories we still tell today go back to ancient Babylonians and even further. Our language is full of idiomatic expressions from these stories. We can have sour grapes, we can cry wolf, and so on. Even our leisure activities are entirely about stories. TV, movies, video games, all tell stories. We go to the theater, read books, museum exhibits. Again, everything tells a story. When you tell a friend about something that happened to you, you will never say, here are some random facts. But you will often say, hey, let me tell you a story. Even in our news, no one ever writes an article or an essay or a feature. Everybody writes a story. Will there be a follow-up to that story on page 4? Hey, this story is really exciting. We need to put this on page 1. This is true at every magazine and newspaper I have ever worked on. Now, one last point before we end today's show. Everything is about complicated situations and complicated relationships. Because that's the other argument, isn't it? It's too complicated. It might confuse people. But really, children are always smarter than we give them credit for. Here's another example of people thinking of others as slightly less than fully human. Just because they don't have the vocabulary yet does not mean they are too stupid to see what's going on around them. And really, life is complicated. It's full of bad words and good words. It's full of maliciousness and kindness. It's full of stories of horror, and it's full of stories of joy. It's not a Disney movie. No handsome rich man will come and take you away from all of life's little troubles just because you're ignorant. Life is complicated. Being human is complicated. And, despite what some people think, we're all equally human. We're all here together in this place where the falling angel meets the rising ape.